Hi there, everyone. Before we kick off tonight's episode, I just wanted to say thank you for listening to the podcast over the last 3 months this year, 2020. It's been a very trying time for us all, but thank you for checking it out and listening in and supporting in any way you can with the creators that come on and my work also. 2021 hopefully will be a better year for everyone, but we're looking forward to it. We have heaps of releases coming out for Halftone Productions, and we'll be back again with a new season of the Halftone Effect. So enjoy the final episode for Season 3 and 2020.
Welcome to another adventure of the Halftone Effect.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another issue of the Halftone Effect. I am your host, Kieran Jack, and we are here. This is the season final for Halftone Effect. It's been a huge year. We've all been dealing with our own ways of life during this COVID times, and it's been a challenge. I won't say it hasn't been a challenge. It's been a challenge, but we've gotten through it, and we're here at the final episode for season 3. I like to call it season 3, even though we've done a stupid amount of episodes. But tonight, I've got a very special guest on tonight. He is a renowned comic book store owner in Melbourne. He opened a store with a fellow partner of his 2011, I'm going to say. I'm pretty sure it was then.
Spot on.
Spot on. There we go. Completely blew me away with what a comic book store could be as a person from Melbourne. And from there on in, my love of comics grew. And tonight we are joined by a very special guest, Mitch Davies. Mitch, thank you for joining in.
Hey, thanks for having me, buddy. This is awesome.
We got there eventually.
Yeah, it has been a long. When did you first approach me about this? I've got I think the listeners need to hear this. So, just what a terrible piece of shit I am that I've put this thing off for such a long time. But it was much earlier in the year, wasn't it?
Yeah. I tend to reach out to everyone prior to getting the season started because I know it's not easy. These things aren't easy to put together. So getting everyone on board is the first stretch. So
yes,
it was early
step,
in the year.
Yeah.
But we're here. I mean, yeah, it took a while, but that's the nature of a podcast, I guess. It's not set to anyone's time schedule. It's not set to a studio's release dates. It's just it happens. It
happens when it happens. Yeah, that's right. That's true. It's a good attitude to have.
It's the fun of it, and I don't hold it against you, man. Come on.
That's funny. It's good.
But yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, man.
You are like I was saying at the start. I did a little intro for you, but comic book stores.
Yes.
This has been probably one of the hardest years in a very, very long time, and just to see the support that you guys have had from watching you guys on social media and just the banter around people that I know about what's been going on and how it's affected them, and it's something amazing to see the feedback and the support that the people have given the stores over this pandemic.
It has been, yeah.
But I mean, it's a trying times. These are trying times. But yeah, it's interesting very much to see that. But before we dive into that too much, I want to get an idea of your background in comic books, Mitch, because I always do this to people. I throw them in under the bus. I want to know their origin stories. We're all comic book readers.
Awesome. All right.
Dive in.
It's a simple story. I mean, I've definitely had as kind of as long as I can remember, like comic books have sort of always been around, littered around my room and stuff like that as a really young kid, I guess, of sort of maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. And I don't think I ever kind of collected comics like probably most of us. I just you'd have a handful of them and you'd just get random ones when you went on road trips with your family or something like that for holidays or whatever. And these would just accumulate. And the thing that I kind of found kind of reassuring from comics that I did actually really enjoy was the fact that as a young kid I had trouble reading and still do today, and it felt like it was an introduction to an understanding of reading at my own pace, in that you could look at this artwork on the page, and even if you necessarily couldn't understand what was being said in the speech bubbles, you could still tell a story or create your own story by just looking at the artwork. So that really had a kind of a positive effect on the way I approached reading when I was younger. And then I kind of, I wouldn't say I necessarily stepped away from it, but it just, it was just one of those things that, was kind of always there. And then when I think I got to like about the late 80s, early 90s, and it was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles sort of boom. There was the Archie comics that were floating around, and I got right into those, and so I started collecting those in a big way. And then after that, along with that was the Marvel's Transformers comics, which actually was like one of the first comics I ever remembered actually properly collecting. And that was right at the end of Marvel's Transformer run, which was, if anyone actually read it at the time, was like an amazing like reinterpretation of what had happened in the Transformers animated movie from the 80s. And it was just like blood, like, well, not blood, but oil shed everywhere, and favorite characters being decimated and stuff, and characters being melted and turning into different characters. And it was all happening in these last like 10 issues, and I kind of co-collected them with a friend of mine, James Yu, and we loved these books, and we kind of like we'd get one guy would get one month, and then the next guy would get one the other month, and then we'd swap them over so we could kind of like double up our reading sort of thing. The only unfortunate thing was that James somehow managed to get like all the key issues, so like issue 75 of Transformers was freaking awesome, and he somehow managed to get that one. And so I never got to keep that one in my collection, which is always heartbreaking. But yeah, from there, so I started to get kind of a collector mentality from that point, I guess. And so that was about, I was probably about 11 or 12. And then going into high school the following year was around the time of the general sort of boom in comics, I guess, right? Like where it kind of really took off, or at least really took off here in Australia. And I was at a new high school where I didn't know anybody, but comics was like pretty popular amongst the kids in year 7, and so I kind of got into that in a big way to kind of feel comfortable around these new group of kids, and I just sort of followed on from there, and it just I used to go see my dad every second week down in Gippsland, and one of the bonuses of catching up with him was he'd always take me into the newsagents after I'd get off the train, and it would every second week would be the new comics for that month release, and I would just go in there and grab a bunch of stuff, and I suddenly found Amazing Spider-Man and Avengers and Fantastic Four, and these books just, I don't know, there was something, What If comic as well, like these books just funnily enough weren't the most popular ones at the time, but somehow really resonated with me, and I stuck with those, and I collected 5 or 6 titles for the next probably, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years, sort of through my time in high school. And before high school was done, I got a part-time job at one of the comic book stores that just happened to be conveniently located around the corner from my high school on Chapel Street there, which was pretty good. We were actually blessed to have 2 comic book stores within stone's throw of each other, being Alternate Worlds and Comics R Us. I shopped at Comics R Us, and then the guys there, because I knew one of the other young guys they had working there at the time, he put in a good word for me, and then I started working with the guys at Comics R Us, and was there for another 12 or 13 odd years after that. It was a pretty long sort of story, and still going now to get to the point where I met my co-owner of All Star through working at Comics R Us, and the two of us just got to a point where we sort of felt that we could do something a little bit different. And then we came up with the idea of All Star, and took a couple of years to kind of put it all together, and and then just went out on our own.
Yeah, I mean that story is fascinating, Mitch. I mean the fact that kids read comics and the joy that it brings them, but to be actually to evolve into it so much that you become you work at it and then running your own one. I mean that's mind-boggling. That's amazing.
It's pretty crazy. Like, I mean, like, for better or worse, like, comics are definitely kind of ingrained in my sort of DNA, but not in the way of, like, someone else, like anybody else probably in my position. I do often think that they would probably approach things maybe a little bit more academically, and might have like more of an insight in potential just kind of general knowledge of the ins and outs of either the comic book industry, but like creators and whatnot as well. Where I've kind of stayed funnily focused on those Marvel characters, just always that sort of resonated with me, and I've kind of stuck with Marvel as a reader for all this time. And unlike a lot of guys as well that are also sort of in my position that have worked at comic book stores and then gone on to own their own, a lot of those guys end up amassing like really amazing Silver Age collections of comics, and just really impressive collections in general, where I just like I never went in for that. I just sort of like just got what I liked from the era that I liked, and kept reading the books that I liked, and that was pretty much it. And that's I'm kind of just in it for the the thrill of the next awesome story, right? So
yeah, well, I mean, I think the funny thing is, like, if you enjoy what you do, you're not really going to work. I mean, there's always work to be done. There's always going to be those days that you don't enjoy, but you've got that ability to really go in and go, I'm proud of what I'm doing. I'm having fun doing it, and I mean, you get to read comics for a job as well. I mean,
it is cool.
Yeah.
It is very cool. It is like it is something that, and I'm sure probably the guys that you've spoken to are about it's as well would probably also admit that it is awesome, and it is amazing to wake up and to go, I get to sell comics for, like, I sell comics to people. I get to talk to about comics to people for my living. What is this? Like, what world do we live in? There's the small amount of people in the world. Like, as far as we know, I think there's only like 4,000 sort of stores, registered, brick and mortar stores worldwide, right? And it's like, of that 4,000, we are one of those. And so to be in that position is kind of ridiculous when you like really think about it, and the fact that we're able to have a business that can support itself in selling comic books. So even that's kind of crazy. But at the same time, it is it is. And especially obviously this year, it has been like, it is a lot of work, and it's a lot of pressure, and the industry itself is a very fickle beast, and it's something that weighs very heavily on comic book retailers. So along with the kind of the awesomeness and the absurdity of being in this kind of blessed situation of getting to be surrounded by these things that we kind of have loved our entire lives, this art form that's just mind-boggling. There is also a part of it that sort of the comic world giveth, and it also taketh away. So it's definitely, I think it's always a very precarious balance between both joyous and thinking that everything is pretty awesome, and then sort of like, oh man, this is tough. Right? So, but that's like with anything, right?
Exactly.
Like you would have that with like your own comic creating and stuff as well, I imagine.
Oh yeah, there's times where you thoroughly enjoy it. There's the buzz that comes with it. There's the conventions that comes with it. There's the in-store appearances that come with it. And then there's the I guess there's the nights where you're sitting in the studio cranking away at pages, and you just hate it.
Yeah.
you're just over it.
It's just hard. Yeah.
Yeah, there's always that momentum that comes with any job, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't like to call it a job, but you have those days where it's just not clicking, and
Yeah.
I mean that's part and parcel of life, I think.
That's right. Yeah, you try to find, like, at least we do, we we were kind of privy to the negative effects that working in the comic industry can definitely have on store owners, and
Yes.
And it can, we sort of witnessed it sort of firsthand, how it had sort of taken somebody's sort of love for something and kind of had mutated it into something else that wasn't kind of as pleasant, no doubt, when that person sort of started out, and we always kind of thought that Troy and I have sort of spoken about it, that the second where it's like that we don't feel like we can get any fun out of it anymore is the time when we would walk away. And it might not be easy to walk away, but that we would agree that for it really, that we got into this to share this love, this mutual love of comics that we have, with as many people as possible. And if that stops sparking joy in our lives, then clearly something needs to change, right? And at this stage, we haven't hit that point, which is great. So we're happy to keep going.
Well, I've got to say, from a personal aspect, I was going to Comics R Us back when I first moved to Melbourne, which was 2006, and I remember actually you working in there, and I wasn't stalking or anything, and nothing like that. But the conversations that we had, and the feedback that you would give me on what I should be checking out. I think one of them at one stage you told me I had to get onto 100 bullets. And you were pushing that onto me.
That sounds like me.
Every time I went there, 100 bullet. I'm like, all right, I'll take the hit, and I'll read 100 bullet, and I loved it. But the attitude that you had towards talking to a customer, and I think that's half the battle with, especially with comic books, because we are such a we're shelved. We're sheltered from the world. We don't really want to talk. We just want to go and get our books, and we want to get in, get out. And the response that you guys had to talking to your customers, like what I've seen with Brendan, and like I've seen with Mel and the other guys who own stores, that's part of the experience now. And
absolutely. Yeah.
You kind of want to have that. You want to have that lasting impression that people
definitely
will come back and they'll be like, "What should I get this week?" I think that's half the fun of comic books as well. Is that
absolutely.
You go into that store, and you don't. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, or just like it is like that idea of like you find, like, people find their kind of home with whatever store for whatever, like, a number of different reasons, right? But one like that is always high on that list seems to be people's enjoyment of interacting with, obviously, the people behind the counter, right? And that was something that was always sort of super important to us, and something that we were able to do a lot more when we first started out, just simply because that just it wasn't quite as busy as it sort of got later down the track. But it was something that we were always mindful of, that if people are kind of if you get a sense that people are kind of keen to check something out, or to just speak about their favorite book, like it's worth the time to try to engage folks with that, because it's you don't know, like there's obviously, in this sort of day and age, there is a lot more opportunities for people to share their love about books and stuff that they're reading, just through, obviously, the exposure with the internet and everything. But still, to be able to do it in person is always, it's not necessarily that easy. You might you might be your only friend in your circle of friends that reads comic books, so heading to the store in reality is potentially the only could be, for a lot of people, the only interaction they have with other comic book fans in face to face. So those opportunities that come up to sort of chat to people about what they're enjoying, and like the thing for us is that I mean, obviously sales are great, that's awesome, but we want to talk to people about books that we're loving not necessarily to just get people on there to read it, but just to get the sale. But it's just you just want to share your love of this great story, right? So and hope that someone extra might come to it, because the more people that read it, the more popular it is, and hopefully the longer this book will kind of be on the shelves for, basically, right? So it's definitely it was something that we tried to we felt that it was something that people enjoyed about our service when we were working at Comics R Us, and we thought that that's definitely something we wanted to showcase sort of moving forward. And it was interesting because around the time that we actually opened up, comic book stores were going through a little bit of a transition sort of stage where there was still the fairly strong stigma of the comic book guy from The Simpsons, and and then also Big Bang Theory didn't kind of help in their sort of interpretation sort of it as well, and it just there was this stigma sort of still around stores a lot about you walk in there and it'll be a grumpy overweight white guy behind the counter, and I mean we're white and we might be a little bit overweight, but we're hopefully not grumpy, right? And we tried to sort of freshen that up and just be more approachable, and just saying hi to people when they walk through the door makes a massive difference to how people feel in the space that you're trying to create, right? And it's little things just like that we realized very quickly goes a long way. And what we saw in the time soon after we opened was a real shift in the way that comic book retailing, not just here in Australia but like worldwide, people were approaching it in a way that it wasn't enough anymore to just be a store that has comic books on the shelf and people go in and buy it and walk out. Like you're saying, that it really was about the idea of having a positive interaction, because everybody knows you get everything you want in life online cheaper, right? So if people are making the effort to come into your physical space and spend their hard-earned cash, you should want to give them a reason to, right? And it just turns out that treating people the way that you want to be treated, funnily enough, that works really well, and has done quite well for us since we first opened. But it was something that we had sort of started to notice a real change in the way that stores everywhere were kind of approaching the way that they were doing things. Not to say that those comic book stores from The Simpsons still exist; they're definitely out there. But they're. But and people, and the truth of the matter is as well, like, not dissing on that, because some people actually enjoy that experience, right? Like, for them, that is the comic book experience. So yeah, it's not for us to judge, but that's just it's just that we've found for us what works best is a more approachable and welcoming scenario.
And like I was saying at the start of the podcast, it was fascinating because, like, at the time when you guys first opened, I went from going to all the stores, like it was Minotaur, Comics R Us, and having a mental blank right now, and they just closed. Classic Comics, and I'd do a trip in once a week to go and get whatever I wanted, and. I noticed that you weren't at that store, and then I heard about this other store, and I was really surprised to hear that this one had opened, and I was like, fourth store, this is incredible. And when you're on Lonsdale Street, it was up the elevator, and in the door, and it was it was so refreshing because it was comics. There was just comic books from one end to the other.
That's it.
You get your Minotaurs, and you got all your classic toys and all that. They're there.
Yeah.
But it just felt it was refreshing almost. And again, like seeing you there, and you were giving that welcoming feeling, and you wanted to buy comics. You wanted to know what was great to read at the time, and I think that's just as important as you can own a store and you can sell the Batmans and the Spider-Mans, but there's also that feature of getting people to come in and find something new.
Yeah, that's we were always kind of excited by the idea of being able to share, kind of the newest sort of thing with folks. And we when we opened, we were particularly sort of fortunate that a lot of very exciting things were happening in comics at that exact moment.
Yes.
So we had not only did we have DC 52 kind of happen within the first few months of us being open, but then there was also basically the image boom, and that we had the first Saga, and basically all of the kind of classics image stuff that sort of span out of that period. And that just, it like lit up like nothing else, and kind of hand in hand, funnily enough, with the non-canonical podcast, which was running at the time as well, which was one of Australia's kind of like first kind of fully featured comic book podcasts, back when podcasts were still kind of in its infancy. Already had like a really massive following behind it, and the guys did us a real solid, and we sort of approached them before we opened up and told them what our plans were and stuff, and they really liked the idea, even though that kind of all of the guys shopped at different places. And at the time, one of the guys, Larry, actually was working in another store. They were all like super excited for us, and it was funny, just having that kind of culture coming as well. Like those guys had created a real, solid following around Melbourne, around them, and then they kind of sort of send people sort of in our direction as well. And the approach was never to sort of like hold a gun to anyone's head about coming to check us out. It was always just like, hey, we're over here doing our thing, if you want to come have a look, that'd be great. And with a few recommendations from people in the know, like the non-canonical boys, it really sort of helped things along for us.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I mean that's an extra piece of the pie almost that you
absolutely,
you've brought that in. I mean, for me personally, I wasn't familiar with indie comics at the time. Like I knew of them, I knew of zines in the scene, but I hadn't really gotten onto it. And because of the store in Lonsdale Street, it got me hooked on it. I was like, what are these? These proper published, and like you guys, you're part of the reason that I'm spiraled down this hole of ridiculous amounts of independent comics, and then decided stupidly to start my own. But I mean, that's the thing. Like everyone has their own little story, and a lot of people that I talk to in the world of comics and independent comics, that there's a tidbit from All Star, that there's a little story that they've got from their first time and how it influenced them, and that's just not in Melbourne. That's all around Australia. I talk to people. So
we were very fortunate. Like that was, aside from all of those things that were happening sort of internationally with, the comics from the US and, having the non-canonical guys as well. It also weirdly coincided with a boom in, Australian comics and especially in the scene in Melbourne as well. And again, sort of when we first sort of opened up, Troy and I both like agreed straight off the bat that we were very keen to be open to stocking as much kind of local stuff as we possibly could, because the idea to us was like, well, if we can support these guys and give them a platform to sell their stuff, they're going to give it back to us in kind as well, right? So like when we have events, they potentially will help us out with doing free sketches and things like that, which we did for Free Comic Book Day, and then it just basically becomes this positive feedback loop basically, right? And we're just weirdly sort of lucky that these things just so many like different like little books like Cranburns sort of came out, and that was a big boom. And it was so much like obviously the continuing stuff of Darren Close with Killaroo, and it just little things just kept popping up all over the place. And it was amazing to be like all we did was just basically opened our sort of doors to it. And we didn't have to do much else, like we just sort of like the guys kind of came to us, and effectively did all the heavy lifting, and then we're just like, yeah, sure, this this looks cool, we'll give it a shot. We'll grab 5 copies of whatever and see if it sells, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't. But if it does, that's great, right? And it was just wanting to give people the opportunity to get their stuff out there, and that's weirdly seemed to motivate a lot of people, right? To get involved, and and then obviously seeing other people at the conventions, like that sort of that grew and grew in those first sort of few years, and it's it was nuts, like to be able to do in-store signings, which in Melbourne for the longest time were like, why is there no, like, there's local comics being produced, but there just didn't seem to be a presence of the community amongst the stores that were open at the time. And it's like these guys are around, like, and they will obviously, they're wanting to reach more people. So why would you not invite them into your store to, to sell stuff for themselves as well? And, so, those first couple of years we did, like a number of launches, the Gestalt stuff as well. We had a couple of launches for those guys, and that was massive. And it was just a really great, positive time to be involved in comics. And we got a lot of praise for like what we were doing, but at the end of the day, it was literally, we just basically gave people an open space to kind of do their own thing, and it just seemed to resonate with folks in a really positive way. So we couldn't have been happy with how that sort of turned out. Things are a little bit different now, just in the way that people are approaching local books and stuff like that, but that's not just local books, that's the comic book industry as a whole. So things have changed. It's been 10 very long years, and but those first few years were like a real golden period that we definitely look back on very fondly when we think about it, for sure.
Well, I mean, it's been 4 years for me, and when I first went in and seen Troy to stock the Talking Bread, he said yeah, and he took the stock that I had there. And I can tell you, I walked out schoolgirling it out, because like living in Melbourne prior to moving away and being my local, it was such a high. I was like, the whole drive back to Albury, I was like fangirling it out. I was like, my comic books at the store that I was like one of my favorite stores, like, hell yes. And then cool. The year after, or a couple of months later, you invited me to do the free comic book day, which was just even a bigger fangirl moment for me. I was like, fuck yes. So I mean, it's a real joy to see the community come together like that, and whether it be for the launches and the comic book in-store days, it's fantastic to see, and I think it goes around both ways, and
yeah, definitely.
It's a positive thing. And look, on the other side of what's happened this year, I really hope we can get back to it, because it is missing. I will say I'm missing the in-store visits more than I am the convention.
It is interesting, isn't it? Yeah, it's people have sort of said that to us a little bit, and it's such a like even kind of pre-COVID as well. It's the landscape for this sort of stuff has kind of changed once again. Where there seem to be, from not just obviously people within the comic creating community, but people that were just reading comics in general were keen to to see what was out there locally, and that was the kind of most exciting thing, that there just seemed to be a legitimate buzz for local books in that way. Whereas the buzz is still there, but it's interesting because the way that I think people now interact with their local store as well, so not just picking up local comics, it just sort of in the way that when they're coming into the store, that even pre-COVID has changed considerably from what it kind of was previously. So I think people's lives have we've had social media sort of explode in such a way, and our whole lives have kind of changed dramatically in the way that I've talked about it before with other folks, how it's very hard to find any great deal of amount of free time these days. Like everybody's always busy doing something, and even when you're not busy, you're kind of connected to some kind of technology, and you're checking Facebook, or you're on your laptop, or whatever, and that has created a weird I think sense of disconnect with these things that people used to really enjoy, like the personalized sort of aspect of, because now that personalized sort of one-on-one treatment, and then the idea of having people sort of in store and things like that, it's all kind of, the feeling that we sort of get is that it's kind of time consuming now for people. So they just have less time to invest in those moments. And so, we're finding, that the launches that we have are still good, but they're not as heavily attended as they have been previously, and so it's just, we're constantly trying to think, what is it that will kind of really re-engage and reignite that love with, in-store appearances and just like comic events in general, so Free Comic Book Day, is an exception to the rule because everybody loves free comics. So, everyone's going to make an effort to come out to that. But anytime we have a launch, which we haven't done effectively at all this year, simply because of obviously everything that's gone on. But yeah, it's the what can we offer people to want them to re-engage with actually making that time to reconnect with a creator on a personal sort of level, so it is very interesting.
It is, and I think the hunger for it will, on the other side of this, will be there.
Hopefully, yeah.
I think that people want to have that interaction again.
Yeah.
And like it has changed my outlook on how I do things as a small business.
Yeah.
But I think for everyone else as well, they're looking at it how they change it up, how they reconfigure what they've been doing for probably the last 5 years, and how you, like you're saying, social media almost has strangled a lot of these kind of environments to the point that it's not getting room to breathe.
No, that's right. Yeah.
And I think that
it's very strange, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's a detriment to what we're trying to do. That face-on-face value for creators and for in-store experiences, it's just, you don't get that same kind of experience. And I mean, going back to where we started with this, the first time I walked into a Melbourne store and how it changed my aspect of shopping for comics. It changed the way I thought about it. And I mean, that kind of experience is gone because whether it be social media or a website, you're basically clicking and collecting. There's no interaction with that. You might have heard something good about it online, and they might have given their view on it. But I mean, it's not that go in and get that experience or that insight into what you should be checking out. It's gone. So
yeah,
I really am keeping my fingers crossed that it does change on the other side of this now for everyone.
Yeah, that's it. Well, at the very least, if the sort of the audience is there and potentially sort of willing to engage, I guess it's on us as both creators and retailers to find what it is, that thing that will spark that interest to the point of making the commitment to to coming out. It's like that's one of our massive pet peeves with when we run event pages on Facebook and things like that, and you have all these people just because of the way that Facebook works, it's like all these people click interested, but so few people commit to the actual going aspect, and so you never really get a true gauge of how many people you think are actually going to come to this thing. And then you wonder, even then, if that social media invite is even reaching the people you wanted to reach, right? So you inevitably, after every event we ever do, you always get half a dozen people coming in the next day like, oh, I had no idea this was happening, and you're just like, God damn it, like you spend all this time and effort trying to to get word out there, and it's basically social media effectively, like you said, is sort of strangling it / working against you in every way possible, which is hilarious because obviously the whole whole idea is that it's bringing the world closer together, but in fact it's splitting us further apart. But that's no pearl of wisdom that everybody else already knows, right? But it's just it's so nuts. It's just but we just we have to work on that, and hopefully can stumble onto whatever it might take to to get people to commit to to getting them back into stores for these kinds of events, right? It'd be really great.
Oh, look, I'm biting at the heels to get back in and do in-store appearances. I mean, I've already got one booked in, which I don't even know if it'll go ahead because if we go backwards with our COVID goals,
Yes.
it might not happen. But I mean, I think I kind of look at it from a music aspect and how bands are booking in shows now, preempting it. Hopefully they can do it. I think that I kind of want to set up that mindset of like, okay, if I can get all these shows, get all these appearances in now, then there might be a chance it happens, but there might not be.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And
No,
I'll
that's
be
it. Well, that's
really, really depressed if it doesn't happen.
that's right. No, but that is a positive outlook to have, though, right? Like, just
Yeah.
you'll will these appearances into existence, right? That's very good.
Now, I mean, you guys have had it pretty hard with the pandemic in Melbourne. It was probably
Yes.
one of the most hardest hit in Australia. And obviously I follow you guys on social media, and I've got you on social media as a friend, and it's been fantastic to watch you guys interact on that, and how you guys have kind of, from a bad situation to be in, you've built upon that, and it's not easy for any business owner. But
No.
I mean, how was that experience? Because you guys had to get a website ready
Yeah.
and launched pretty quickly. Which honestly, I'm happy. Someone who doesn't live in the city anymore, I'm happy to see that you've finally got a website, because
Yes.
that I think is quintessential to any. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It was lacking. It was dead. It was lacking. It was lacking. Yeah. I mean, look, it was as a small business that 2019 wasn't a particularly great year for comic books and comic book sales, right? And then to lead into 2020 was and at the start of the year with obviously the bushfires, of course, and that just had everybody already sort of feeling a general unease, just going around, and it does like. When stuff like it's a national tragedy that we're like dealing with, the idea of going in and buying comic books is both, can be comforting, but it's also like, if people think about it for too long, it just seems kind of absurd, right? It's like, what the hell am I spending money on comic books for, right? I should be doing, more positive things for the community or whatever. And it is, as a retailer, as an individual, and like, I was very much struggling with my position, like, as sort of like, what am I doing? Like, am I doing enough? And we've, as a store, we've tried to be mindful about community, stuff in the past, obviously with fundraising and things like that. But it just, at the same time, you want to be able to kind of give back, and this, the bushfire stuff just seemed like it was just, insurmountable, and we obviously we sort of worked through that, and we did a couple of little things there and raised a little bit of cash, but it wasn't really much in the sort of the big scheme of things. But then a couple of months later we stepped into COVID, and it was just like, man, it was like going from bad to worse, and it was really, really difficult, and it was hard going to work every day, because it was a situation where not just obviously what we were dealing with here in Melbourne, but and Australia, but then the comic industry in general effectively kind of imploded on itself in a really small period of time, where Diamond, the major distributor of comics worldwide, shut their doors for at the time an unannounced amount of time, and we were basically like effectively put into a dark, locked room. We literally had no information, so we were dealing with a problem with our supply chain, the possibility of we ourselves took on before the government asked, because there was at that point not a really lot of guidelines from the government, that we set about having our own lockdown that we put into place, because we didn't feel comfortable like inviting our customers to be coming out into this landscape, and then also on top of that, how our staff were going to feel being in a store with people coming and going that could potentially be sick. So we set about having I think in the end it was about 7 weeks or so, which funnily enough coincided with this period of no new comics coming out from the US. So it was like such a weird sort of point in time, and like nothing else we'd ever come up against, and it was literally like every day there was some other challenge that we had to face, and it was daunting, and it was really, really taxing, and all of this, and not to say woe was me, but at the same time, my wife was very heavily pregnant and due to have a baby in July, and our first kid, and it was kind of trying to deal with process all of that as well. It was sort of like, what the hell is going on, and in the end, like, it just day by day we just kind of kept plodding along, and we were basically we just came to the agreement that if we could stand to make it through, hopefully we'll be in a better position than we were when we started out, basically, right? So even before COVID, the start of the year wasn't awesome, but if we're able to plug through and just stick with it, and actually come out the other side, it not saying things will be okay, but it's like, well, we would have obviously dealt with like the worst, kind of some of the worst stuff that could be thrown at a comic book store, right? And that's just sort of what we did. We kind of knuckled down rather, and just and kind of just try to roll with it as much as possible. So then we had no new comics for a while, and no web store, like you said. So we decided that, well, we're going to have to try to get people their comics, but obviously we had this self-imposed lockdown. So we had to start up a mail order service, and so we started contacting all our standing order customers, and basically anything that was already aside for them, we were like, oh, would you like to pay for that over the phone? And we can send that and mail it out. And then basically from that point, we were like, okay, well, we're going to change the way we do our standing orders from now on. We're basically going to have to look at getting all of our standing order customers payment details on file to process on a weekly basis, as not at the time, but as new comics would start up again, that we would charge them as the comics would come in, rather than waiting for them to come in and pick them up, because God knows when that might be, right, with the lockdowns. So we put that into place, and then all of this time, and for many years prior to this, we had been trying so hard to get a website up and running, but Troy and I are complete Luddites, right? Like, we're just like, firsthand, you've experienced it. Like, this has taken this interview just to find out if I've got Skype on some kind of electrical implement at home is a drama within itself, right? So like we have no idea. And so we were, we had sort of tried to farm it out to a couple of friends to help us in the early days, and then that didn't eventuate. And then we had one of our guys in house, Anthony, who had a little bit of, a kind of prowess with that stuff, start working on it. And the problem was he could never dedicate enough time to it to get it sort of like at a point where it was up and running. Like, he was only ever able to do a couple of hours here and there. And then at least with COVID, it was like that was his job, right? Basically, he went away into an office and just worked on putting this thing together for the space of like a month. And then then that was up and running, and that kind of coincided with us coming out of our initial lockdown, new comics coming out again, which were great. And then going into the new lockdown a month or so later, right? And having the web store there has just made a massive difference, and we have been really like completely blindsided by the response to the actual web store itself. It's been one thing to have all of our standing order customers, for the most part, get on board with the idea of their comics being billed weekly and then mailed out to them once a month. But then to find a whole new customer base that weren't were probably shopping with us when they came into the city, but that may not have been that often. And so now that's opened us up totally to that as well. So like you said, like it's just we have had the most insane outpouring of support from our customer base like nothing else. We talk about it frequently and we reference it quite a lot on our social media and stuff in the past, but this was something that for better or worse, like if we and we were saying it at the time, even if we don't make it out of this, what has happened, what has taken place for us in this time, the support that we got from customers is like by far the most. We won an international award, an Eisner for best store a few years back, and we've gotten other accolades and things like that in the past, but all of that stuff like pales in comparison to what people have given of themselves to us this year in their support. It's just been, Kieran, I cannot speak highly enough of these people, right? It's just been insane. And we, like it, we always say that, and stores, do say this quite frequently, like, we are, we wouldn't be anywhere without you. And in this case, they literally lifted us up and kept us going, right? So kept everybody that we had working. It's Troy and myself and a team of 6 other guys, and so there's 8 of us in total. And for a small business, we never thought that we'd ever be in a position to have more than 1 or 2 employees. But as it turns out, this is where we're at. And being in a position where you're concerned about your employees and what's going to happen to them in a time like this, and for that to be alleviated at least somewhat thanks to this support again was just, man, it was amazing, man. It was just nuts. And so that's now rolled over to obviously being able to be open again, and people coming back into the store. And thankfully, weirdly enough, we've been kind of blessed in that Melbourne City hasn't really kind of restarted in a big way, because obviously a lot of office businesses and stuff like that are not having their workers coming back into work until potentially early next year. So still a lot of our customers who do work in the city are not actually coming through, because work's just telling them to work from home. So we're still mailing stuff out quite frequently, with the occasional sort of person sort of coming through and doing a pickup, right? So we've been pretty blessed with having a healthy mix where we can kind of balance those two different sort of approaches to the business. Like where when we were shut and doing mail order, it was great because that's all we were doing. But now being open and trying to serve people while you're still trying to do mail orders is another business altogether, right? And so we're still grappling with that. But our team of 6 have been absolutely like, talk about our customers being just absolute champions, but these 6 guys and girls have just been phenomenal. In a time when literally from one day to the next you don't know what's going to happen. You're traveling in on public transport during this pandemic, and they would rock up and they do their work and they do it with a smile, and they were just like, you know what, I'm just happy to be working and to have a job, and and they were happy to do what it would take to to keep us in business. And that was more than we could really stand to ask for at this weird and ridiculous sort of setting that we found ourselves in, right? So yeah, it's been a crazy time, man.
Honestly, man, hearing you talk over the last 15 minutes about that's heartwarming. Like that's the joy to take from this bad year. It's been a bad year.
That's right.
Doesn't matter how you look at it. It's been a bad year for everyone.
It's been a bad year. Yeah.
And I think for you guys watching you on social media, the banter and the camaraderie that goes on in the store when you're doing the parcels and the packing, like that was entertaining in itself. It was a little bit extra on the top with the support that everyone was giving you through this pandemic. And it was always enjoyable seeing those things. And I love
Thanks, man.
I do love the fact that you're trying to outdo the mailage for each day when you rock up to the post
The
office.
postage, yeah.
Because I
It
know
was,
that they love it when you come in with a box full of parcels, but you're not rocking up with a box. This is a parcel. This is like a full
that's it.
trolley full of
Trolley
parcels.
fulls, yeah.
Mate,
That's we got. There was a certain notoriety after a certain period of time where they started to grow kind of more and more as time sort of went on, and it just got to a point where I think they just stopped commenting on it because it just it just kept being pretty big on a regular basis, and they would sort of joke about it initially, and then I think every time they saw us, it'd be kind of like, these guys again, So,
yeah, I know that. Yeah.
No, it's a good effect to have if that's what's happening, right? So
Yeah, that's amazing, Mitch. It's
yeah,
really, really good to hear that kind of story from what's
thanks,
happened
man.
over the years. So, and I mean, the store, you've had a big year. It's been an experience in building it. But I mean, you and Troy have got something to be very proud of. It's the pinnacle of comic book stores in Melbourne. I mean,
Thanks,
no,
buddy.
dude, it honestly, it's such a joy to go there when I do get to visit Melbourne, and when I do go
That's
back,
awesome.
I'll be definitely popping in again.
I'm glad.
It's important to keep these things going, like we've been talking about over this episode. The feeling it is to go into a store and actually talk to the people who own it or their
Yeah.
employees, and actually pick up a book and look at it and see whether it's what you would be into. That will never, for me, and we've talked about it over podcasts before, but it'll never stop being that for me. There's nothing better than picking up a comic book. It's tangible, it's physical, and you get to read it, and that's important.
Yeah.
But, I think that's just quintessential to anyone who is a comic book reader. That physical copy is a must.
It is definitely.
I mean, we could go on for hours. I mean, this might be another episode. I reckon we might need to come back on and just get you back on the talk. Maybe a couple of years time, we can properly organise it.
Book me in for 2023.
So I'll book you in for season 5. How's that sound?
Awesome, sounds good.
That'll be that then. But Mitch, thank you for coming on the show tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing you talk about the world that you live in. And it's been it's a killer episode for the final episode. Yeah, so
no, I
for the
appreciate
season.
it, man. Thank you very much.
But before we do finish up, where can people find All Star Comics on generally?
Excellent. Well, we are relocated now to just level 1, 53 Queen Street in Melbourne. We were originally over 2 floors, but funnily enough, just pre-COVID, we thought it time to move away from the ground floor and just take up level 1. And we've compacted ourselves into that space, which is quite cool. You can also check us on the website, the web store rather. It's just allstarcomics at .com.au. One word there. It's we're pretty proud of the web store in the end. We wanted to have something that would kind of feel as much as like this being in the store as possible, because like you're saying, the in-store feeling that you get is kind of all important, and we wanted to kind of have try to have that come across in the web store sort of layout, and we feel like we're kind of sort of gotten there a little bit in the way that sort of things are grouped and shown sort of on there. So we're pretty proud of how that came up in the end, thanks to old mate Anthony, that's for sure. But and then we're on obviously all the social medias. We're on Twitter under ASC Melbourne, under that as well for Instagram. You can obviously find us on Facebook at All Star Comics Melbourne. That's I think that's pretty much everything.
Awesome. There you go, guys. That's perfect. Guys, go and check out the store. It is phenomenal. Like I've said tonight, I've got high praise for the store and the people who are in it and running it. But this is just as important as indie comics. Without comic book stores, there wouldn't have been the great creators that you've been able to read over the years, and you wouldn't have been able to read them. And that's just as important as the comic books themselves. So go on and support your comic book store. Go on and check out All Star, because it's a kick-ass store regardless. And go and check out their web store or social media. Go and check it out at all. Mitch, thank you once again for coming on the show tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Kieran. Much appreciated, man.
And we'll get you back on very soon.
Definitely. Sounds like a
2023.
plan.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
See ya.